Imagine waking up tomorrow, checking your phone, and seeing the news that the government just typed another $1 trillion right into existence. Your first thought is probably, well, the dollar is finished, right? I mean, we've all been taught that massive money printing automatically triggers hyperinflation and total economic collapse. But here is the massive paradox we're exploring today. Over the last couple of decades, the US essentially did exactly that. And yet, the sky didn't fall. Let's figure out why.
So, seriously, when all those trillions were created, why didn't the US instantly collapse into hyperinflation like we've seen in other countries? Now, yes, obviously we saw inflation surge recently, but the structural core of the country actually held up. The dollar didn't lose its crown. So what is structurally different about the American financial system that lets it absorb a shock that would absolutely decimate other economies? Well, the answer is super fascinating. And spoiler alert, it has almost nothing to do with printing presses and literally everything to do with the concept we interact with every single day: trust. To really get this, we first need to completely dismantle a massive myth about how money is actually made. You know, it's not giant fleets of armored trucks full of cash or huge industrial machines churning out endless stacks of green paper. The reality is much, much quieter. These days, most new money is purely digital. When the economy hits rough waters, the Federal Reserve electronically updates bank reserves. That's it. No trucks, no presses. Just an accountant basically updating a ledger on a computer screen by adding a few extra zeros.
But you see, simply typing out that digital money, that's really only half the equation. The real danger, the actual trigger for inflation, only happens when that newly created money chases more goods than the economy can actually produce. It's a really delicate balance. If the economy can expand to absorb that new cash, the system holds together just fine. But if the money supply suddenly surges while the actual supply of real-world goods shrinks, well, that's when prices are forced straight up.
Now, here is where America has a completely unique superpower. The US dollar is not just America's currency, it's the world's currency. Think of it kind of like the world's most popular, never-expiring gift card. Imagine if you held the power to issue a gift card that literally everyone on the planet desperately wanted in their wallet. You could issue more and more of them without people tossing them in the trash, right? That is exactly the incredibly rare, highly privileged position the United States has enjoyed for decades. And let me tell you, that demand is absolutely relentless. It's not just Americans spending at the local grocery store. When countries conduct international trade, they settle it in dollars. When nations trade oil across the globe, it's priced in dollars. Global investments rely on it, and foreign central banks hoard trillions of them in their vaults just for stability. This massive global demand acts like a giant sponge. It absorbs those newly created dollars and shields the US from the kind of immediate hyperinflation a smaller country would definitely face. Section 1. A Tale of Two Crises, 2008 versus COVID-19. To solve the mystery of where all this new digital money actually goes, we have to look at the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. Back then, the Fed expanded the money supply dramatically, but that money didn't really go to Main Street. It went almost directly to Wall Street. It flowed into banks that were desperate for reserves. Investors took that cheap money and bought up stocks, and real estate values soared. So inflation absolutely existed, but it was trapped inside financial assets. That's exactly why your retirement portfolio might have grown a whole lot faster than your hourly wages did back then.
But fast forward to the pandemic, and the rules completely flipped. This time, everyday consumers received direct stimulus checks, and governments dramatically ramped up their spending. But simultaneously, and this is the absolute critical divergence here, the physical economy broke. Businesses shut their doors, factories completely paused, global shipping practically ground to a halt. We literally put cash directly into the hands of consumers at the exact moment the world physically couldn't produce enough stuff for them to buy.
The contrast between the two is just stark. In 2008, new money went to banks while the physical economy stayed functional. And the result? Asset inflation. But during COVID-19, the money went directly to consumers while supply chains were broken. The inevitable result of that? Consumer price inflation. It wasn't just simple money printing. It was this perfect storm of spiked demand, severe supply shortages, and a totally bloated money supply, all colliding at the exact same time. All of this brings us to a very logical question. If simply typing numbers into a computer could save the banking system in 2008 and keep millions of families afloat in 2020, why not just keep doing it, right? Why shouldn't the government perpetually create money to pay for everything, forever? It sounds like an infinite economic cheat code. But, as you might guess, the fundamental limits of our financial system dictate that this cheat code definitely has an expiration date.
It all really comes down to what we can call the rubber band effect. Think of U.S. economic trust as this massive industrial strength rubber band. Thanks to that intense global demand and the sheer size of the economy, America can stretch this band further than almost any other nation to absorb financial crises. But it is still a rubber band. It just cannot stretch forever. If you pull it too far for too long without letting it contract, well, it's going to violently snap.
And if that trust snaps, the unraveling is rapid. First, global investors realize America is just printing without any discipline, so they immediately demand aggressively higher interest rates to lend money. Second, capital frantically flees into other assets to protect itself. Third, the value of the US dollar just plummets on the global stage. And finally, uncontrollable inflation takes root, completely destroying purchasing power. Basically, the entire system falls like a line of dominoes.
So you're probably wondering, why hasn't it snapped yet? Well, it's because the dollar doesn't just rest on nothing. It rests on 4 really massive pillars. We're talking about a genuinely huge, productive economy, the deepest, most liquid financial markets on the planet, relentless global demand, and, most importantly, decades of deeply ingrained confidence in American institutions. These pillars are infinitely more valuable and way more powerful than the physical ink or paper the money is printed on.
It all ultimately boils down to one incredibly simple truth. In modern finance, trust is one of the most valuable assets on Earth. Money, at its core, is just a shared illusion. It literally only works because we all collectively wake up every single morning and believe it works. The real story of modern economics isn't actually about printing presses at all. It's about a highly fragile ecosystem of global trust. Because if you lose that trust, no amount of freshly typed digital dollars can ever buy it back. The American system endures because it has successfully maintained that global confidence through some truly historic crises. But remember, trust is not permanent. It's something that has to be earned daily. Knowing that the world's most powerful financial engine runs entirely on the collective belief of the people using it, what happens the day that belief finally disappears? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.